As today, we're going to cover a situation where your interior or exterior standoff brackets aren't making contact with the aluminum extrusion. So you're getting an improper seal, whether that's in the extended position or the retracted position on the outside of the coach. A couple things you're going to look for is first, bracket placement. Bracket, we're talking about the standoffs attached to the box that the cables are attached to. We want to ensure that they're bottoming out and touching the aluminum extrusion at all four corners on the interior and as well as the exterior. The exterior you won't be able to see. The T-metal, you're just making sure that's sealing up against the bulb seal on the outside of the coach. On the interior, we're going to start there. If one of your brackets or multiple brackets weren't touching, the first thing we're going to want to check is the spacing between the standoff bracket and the back of your fascia board or your LVL wood board. How you're going to do that is you're going to cycle the room in a little bit. And on your standoff brackets, they don't have an emboss or a spacing tab or anything like that on your interiors for the Accu-Slide. So what you end up doing is the OEM creeps all the standoff brackets evenly away from the back of their fascia board that would be right on this end wall of the slide box. Once they put that wood up there, they should have a 1/4 inch all the way down to 1/8 of an inch. So 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch is your tolerance, but they all should be that same distance. So you'll have a little space in between the face of the bracket and your wood board that's screwed to the end wall of your box. Make sure that's even all four corners. If it's not, loosen up on the appropriate cable. Say if it was this top out on the left side of the motor, we would go to our top out on the left side of the motor, loosen that cable up. Once that tension is loose and you got a little bit of wiggle room in your cable, from that point, if it was too far back, you could go ahead and take out all your screws, bump the bracket forward, reinsert your screws, and now it's properly placed and has the exact same gap as the other 3 standoffs from your backer board. Once that's achieved, you can go ahead and put your proper tension back on that cable. Another thing, which is super crucial in order to not damage any of our cables, would be the up and down. This will also affect your seal if it's off too far. Run your room 6 inches from being fully extended on the interior. Look at your cables and ensure that they're going straight back into the extrusion. We allow for 1/8 of an inch up and 1/8 of an inch down. So a 1/4 inch overall of movement to ensure that that cable is running directly back into our extrusion. Same with your bottom cable. Check that one as well. As long as those are running straight back into the extrusion, you're good. Check both sides, all four corners. If the bracket is too high or too low on an above floor slide, such as this mock-up, remove all your screws. There'll be 4 of them. Loosen up on your 2 in the slot. Now tap your bracket up or down accordingly. Once you have it aligned, go ahead and tighten those 2 up and resecure your other 4 screws. That's if your bracket isn't placed properly, and that would cause a sealing issue, and it would potentially cause cable failure due to causing damage to that cable, fraying it like 1 strand at a time. Another reason why one of the corners wouldn't seal to the room would be in the adjustments themselves. Maybe it was improperly adjusted straight from the factory, or if you've had your coach in at a service center and they were working on it and they made some adjustments to the slide, maybe those were done improperly too. That does happen from time to time. In a situation where it's your adjustments, you run the room all the way out, And for this one, we'll say that this bottom corner isn't sealing properly. That is your bottom out, because it's 4 cables on the interior pulling the room out. So your interior cables that you can see on the inside of the coach are your out cables. Cables on the outside of the coach are your in cables. So bottom out isn't sealing up. We're going to come up to our bracket, our out bracket, bottom cable. If the bracket's not touching, pull on the bottom out cable. And if that brings the bracket up against the extrusion, then you know you have room available to go ahead and tighten up on the out cable. Typically what happens in this situation is when they've made their adjustments and they were trying to get the outs to seal, they had too much tension on the opposing cable. This system operates as like a give and take system without giving you the slack and the ends relaxing. The outs can't seal properly. First thing you're going to want to do is go to your bottom in cable, which is the opposing cable you're working on. Loosen that cable up completely to where there's no tension on it. And as you can see on this mock-up, the bottom end now has plenty of slack, which is going to allow you to tighten up on your bottom out fully and get it to touch up against our mech or up against the extrusion. That could be on the G4. If you're running the G4 system, that's going to be a plastic extrusion that's wrapped around all of this, closing it off, acting as a jam. Or if it's in the hybrid format, like this one here, it's the aluminum extrusion. And it could be also the ABS version of the Accu-Slide, which is a full picture frame. So instead of just extrusion on one side, you'd have a header the other side and the flat sill as well. Once you've made your necessary adjustments on that bottom out cable to get that bracket to touch, now just merely go back to your in, add tension to it, using your needle nose pliers. If you have to add tension to a cable or remove it, you should be using clamping vice grips, needle nose vice grips. There's a smooth portion of the stud, the adjustment stud, never on the cable, never on the threads. Once you have that clamped on there, we can go ahead and tighten this up. Find it easier to use a speed wrench or a socket with a ratchet. That works too. Your adjustment nut for the cables is 3/8 of an inch. Your chain adjustment nut, if you had to mess with that, is a 7/16. The amount of tension I'm going to put back on that end cable, you go to the outside of the coach with the room fully extended. All your cables on the outside should have a 1/2 inch up and a 1/2 inch down with a fair amount of ease. You shouldn't have to hang on to it to get it. Just push up, push down. If you've got a 1/2 inch and the cable's not drooping or slacked, you're good. Same with the bottom. I'm a little tighter on that one, but it's still within tolerance. Once you're done with everything and you have all your adjustments finished, ensure that your brackets are fairly straight up and down. They're not cocked to the side one way or the other. They are in alignment with the chain. The jam nut, which is located on the chain adjustment, is locked down tight, which prevents these in and out brackets from turning forward or backwards once they pass each other during travel. If these weren't locked down, the in and out can crash into one another, causing cable failure and other issues. You potentially could rip the corner pulley off the wall and everything else. Be sure to put your anti-vibration foam block back on. If these didn't have them when you were starting to work on it, you can take a 1/4 20 free running nut and make it a jam nut, add it to the end of the stud, and tighten it up against the 3/8 coupling nut. What this does is once it's wedged all the way back, it takes the shape or the form of the nut and it stops the nut from backing off of itself. So when you have your adjustments set, they stay where you initially put them. Without them, the outs continue to get tighter, the ends continue to loosen up on you until the nut eventually, with road vibration being hauled down the highway, the nut will work itself right off the end of the stud. So crucial that these are on there and wedged all the way into place. Another issue that can arise that could potentially cause your room not to seal up properly would be cable standoff bracket deflection. While you're operating your room, especially on the interiors, this is where we see this the most, run and cycle the room in and be mindful and keep an eye on both of your bottom, especially your bottom standoff brackets. This can happen at the top as well. As you're cycling it, what you're looking for is the bracket pulling away from the end wall or the slide out box. This can cause a bad seal as far as exterior on the interior of the coach in the extended position. You could have a bad seal. It's not sealing up right. This could be causing that. Cycle the room in, and as you're cycling, what you're looking for is the bracket or a standoff bracket pulling away from the slide out end wall. This is typically due to the OEM or service center using self-tapping screws instead of non-self-tapping, number 10s or larger, going into the interior standoff brackets. The only place that we allow self-tapping screw to be used, number 10 or larger still, is on the outside standoff brackets. Interiors, corner pulleys, motor, everything should be number 10 or larger, non-self-tapping screws. That's because most of the construction in the RV industry is aluminum construction, and the tubes themselves are filled with wood. Using a self-tapper, it drills or bores that wood out, and now the screw is not hanging on and securing the standoff bracket to the sidewall like it's supposed to. To simulate this, I'm going to go ahead and loosen up on some of these screws here to kind of give you an idea of what you'd be looking for deflection. So what we're looking for while we're cycling the room is a gap forming in between the end wall tube, the slide out box, and the standoff bracket. Now to simulate this, I went ahead and I took the screws and loosened them up so I could show you exactly what it's going to look like. In reality, this will be actually pulling those screws out of the tube. So you wouldn't see the head sticking out. You'd actually see all the screws, the material in here, and they'd be working themselves out of that tube. And the bracket would end up deflecting and rocking, similar to that there. And when you run it in, it'll relax a little bit. When you go to run it out, and it starts pulling on that bracket, that's when you're going to see that gap get larger right up in here. And that will cause a bad seal area as far as the standoff bracket sealing up against the mech properly. Could be crept in a little bit. And that would be due to self-tapping screws being used. If that's the case, we do have a kit. It's the 217-00148. Comes in a set of 4, and it's a reinforcement bracket. This only works if there was wood backer in the tubes and they use self-tapping screws. If there was no wood backer present, and that's why the bracket's pulling off, the 148 service kit does you no good. From that point, they'll either have to open up the face of the tube, then beat in some of the wood backer tube in order to achieve this, or worst case scenario, the end walls of the tube or the end walls of the slide out box need to go ahead and be replaced and rebuilt to the proper specifications. Once the bracket's secured up against the box, that should go ahead and take care of your issue with that corner not sealing up. Other things that can play into this is if your standoff brackets, everything's placed properly, your adjustments are done properly. It could be in the box build itself. If they had a different length or depth end wall on one side than the other, that could be playing into that as far as why the room wouldn't seal at one of the corners. Box construction is key. We have seen in the past, it's rare, but it does happen, where they get their end walls on the slide out box reversed and flipped around, and now your taper isn't on your roof line where water would run off and away from your coach. It's now at the bottom on the floor. That could be causing a sealing issue as well. The other would be in the instance they built the box with like a ram system, ram driven slide out or a through frame slide. And typically the outside end wall is built with a taper on it so that the top hits first and seals, and then the bottom ram where everything's connected on the end condition to the slide out box where it's pulling the rest of it in tight at the bottom. If they did that for one of the cable slides, you're never going to get that bottom to seal up properly. So that's just a few options, few things to look over, and a few scenarios. Hopefully this video will help you guys find those issues, correct them, and get the room to seal from that point. If you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to call our customer support, and we'll be happy to walk you through the repair.